Hi guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. Today I want to share with you my February wrap up and as well as the statistics for February. Yeah, in February I managed to read 11 books, which was definitely fine. I think it was the same amount as January, more or less. I ended up reading 3,569 pages with an average of 324 pages per book. In terms of genres, I ended up reading one sci-fi book, 2 fantasies, 1 thriller, 2 urban fantasies, 1 historical fiction, 1 horror book, 1 mystery, and 2 romances. So in terms of, it worked a lot better for me because it was a much more bigger variety of genres than previous month. I also, in terms of format, I ended up reading 1 trade paperback, 2 mass markets, 1 ebook, and 7 audiobooks. In terms of age group, 8 of them were adults, 2 of them were YA, and then I had 1 that was middle grade. And in terms of publication year, I had 1 from the 60s, 1 from the 90s, 1 from the 2010s, 2010 I think, just that, and 1 from 2011, 1 from 2013, 2 from 2017, 2 from 2018, 1 from 19, and 1 from 2021. I need to sort of change my layout here so that it groups all of the 10s together because it takes up a lot of space. In terms of page length, I read 4 books between 200 and 299 pages. I read 5 books between 300 and 399 pages. Then I read 2 books between 400 and 499 pages. The longest book that I read in February was Saving Time by Jodi Taylor. This one was 497 pages. The shortest book that I read was Dealing with Dragons. It was 212 pages. In terms of series and standalone working, I read 1 that was standalone and 10 books from a series. 4 of those series books were started, and 6 of them were ongoing. In terms of ratings, it was a really good month. I read 1 book that was 3.5 stars, 4 books that were 4 stars, 4 books that were 4.5 stars, and 2 books that were 5 stars with an average rating of 4.32. So it was way better than January in terms of quality. So I was very, very happy about that after January, which was, I think, a very low for me. The first book that I finished in February was Saving Time by Jodi Taylor. This is book 3 in the Time Police series. The Time Police series is a spin-off series to the Chronicles of St. Mary's. And this is a time travel series where we have these historians that works at the St. Mary's Institute, I think, and they go back in time to collect information about what went on in that time and go back and make sure that deliver the information they have to the general public in secrecy. Obviously people don't know that they traveled back in time. But then we have the Time Police, and Time Police make sure that their rules are followed, that people don't go and change things that happened in history for their own in any way. So there are places that you're not allowed to go to, and sort of like that. So Time Police, they focus on that part. And then in this one, in the Time Police series, we're also following 3 different perspectives, whereas in the Chronicles of St. Mary's we only follow the 1 perspective. But in this one we have 3 perspectives, and this one definitely had a lot of tie-ins to the St. Mary books before this. I think because our main character in that one definitely shows up here, and there are some references. They talk about things that happens. I read the St. Mary book in November, and they're definitely, I'm a little uncertain about which book happened first, but I think that the Time Police book happened before the St. Mary book. But that was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I have a lot of fun with these. Yeah, so definitely recommend them. If you enjoy the St. Mary books, definitely check out the Time Police series as well. They're a lot of fun. The next thing that I read was Sea of Lies by Victoria Thompson. I wanted to check out something else but Victoria Thompson after I've read all of the Gaslight Mystery books. And I didn't know what to go for, but I had this audio available and I listened to it. I don't think it's necessarily a mystery in the same way that the Gaslight Mystery was, but it does have some thriller suspensey moments. But it said I forgot what time it's set in, but it's definitely a historical. And we are following this. There's a lot of talk about women rights and women voting. So I think it must be in the beginning of the 1900s, late 1800s. It was very interesting in that way, but I didn't love this one as much as her Gaslight mystery book, so I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I don't know if I'm going to be continuing with this series or if I'm going to see if she has something else that I'm more interested in reading. Next up, I finished up a reread, and that was Bloodlines by Richelle Mead. This is the first book in the Bloodlines series. The Bloodlines series is a spin-off to the Vampire Academy, and in this one we follow Sydney, who is an alchemist. She is chosen to be helping out with her situation. One of the Moro vampires from the royal court is hiding away in Palm Springs, California, and she has to sort of help protecting her and make sure that everything goes smoothly. And so she actually has to room with the Moro vampire, and they are sort of taught to not dislike Moro, any vampires in general, that they are wrong because of the magic and all of that. So she has a hard time coming to terms with the fact that she has to share a room with her now. In this place we also have some other characters from the Vampire Academy series. One of them is Adrian, who is one of the love interests, Rose's love interest in the Vampire Academy, but he goes here as well, and they start a friendship and got to know each other in this one. I really enjoyed it. I like the alchemy aspects of this a lot, and it was a lot of fun rereading this, and it took it some time to get into it again, but after the first third, I think I was really hooked and wanted to read it. And once I finished this one, I just immediately wanted to pick up the next one. I gave it 5 stars again. I have a lot of comfort reading them, and I didn't want to change my rating. The next thing that I finished was Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. This is a YA fantasy book. It is also sort of alternative history, as well as it's a dark fantasy, alternative history, and has some sci-fi elements as well. We are set in way back in time. It's as if it's the time of the Black Plague. And we are following this woman who comes from this poor area of this realm. She has grown up in a town where this disease is spreading and it's causing a lot of trouble. She goes to this school for alchemists in order to study alchemy and become better and learn how to help the sick with relieving from the pain, or if they can ever get a cure for this plague thing that's going on. So it's definitely a very rough reading. It has some tropes that are very general YA, but it's also very difficult reading it because of the pandemic elements that's part of this. And it's definitely interesting to see this because I can recognize a lot of the things that people do when they're pressured, when they're in a situation that they are not used to, when a pandemic like this spreads over a land, and how it can affect everything. Even if COVID was definitely not nearly as bad as the Black Plague, it definitely has some, you could definitely relate to some of the things that went on in that. So it also could be difficult for people to read this if they are still living in have difficulties with the pandemic in their area right now. So it could be triggering. People are not ready to read that kind of thing. For me it wasn't a problem, but I also we are living as if this never happened already. In Denmark we don't really have any restrictions at all, and sometimes people seem to have forgotten that there was ever something called COVID. But yeah, it's fine. I mean, it still exists, but it's not something that's worrying anyone, and it's not affecting our day-to-day life. So yeah. Anyway, so it could be triggering for people, but I liked how it changed our main characters as well, especially like our female main character. We saw the things from Jodi, how she changed when she got to know alchemy. She started, like, necromancy is a forbidden magic, but then obviously as people become more desperate and see things that they probably wouldn't have thought they would be able to would be seeing in a short period of time, they probably go to desperate measures in order to try and figure things out, even if they seem shady and not right. But I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I am interested in reading the last book in this duology. I didn't know that this was a series, but it felt like it could have ended with this book, but there is another book, but it's only a duology, so I think I will definitely read the next one as well. The next thing that I finished was The Spider by Jennifer Estep. The Spider by Jennifer Estep. This is book 11 in the Elemental Assassin series. I originally put on the 10th book, but I realized pretty early after that I already read that book, so I just forgot that I read it. But once I looked into the books, I remembered that I actually had read it and I had marked it as read on Goodreads, so I don't know why I had a brain malfunction there. But I ended up reading this one, and The Spider is actually just a book that talks about how Jen Blanco became the spider that she is. So it takes her back in time to when she had her first assassination thing happening and people got to know who the spider was. You saw things, her relation to her foster dad, Fletcher, who passed away in the beginning of a first book in the series, so it's not a spoiler or anything. But I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite thing I read in the series at all, but it was interesting. It started out with her just telling this story to her partner about how it worked, because there was like 10 years since she became the spider kind of thing. And in that way it worked really well. You can actually start with this one if you want to, but I don't think I would recommend it in a way. I still think that it's better to read them in the general order, also because you meet characters that you're already familiar with at this point, and it's fun to see how they first met and got to know each other. So that was a lot of fun in that way. So yeah, end up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Looking forward to reading on in the series. The next thing that I finished was Hard Hitter by Sarina Bowen. This is book 2 in the Brooklyn Bruisers series. This one follows this man who is on the hockey team chosen to be the hitter, the one who like gets into those fights with the other team, like the other team that they're playing against. I don't know why hockey is that way, that you actually have some people chosen just to do that. But he is definitely that on this team. Very brutal, but he has some injuries or something, and he goes to this masseuse therapist who is the women lead we follow in this one. And it starts out very, very platonic. There's nothing going on in the beginning. He's very afraid of having other people touching him. He has like he has a hard time letting anyone in. None of his teammates or friends or anything has ever seen his apartment. And so he is pretty, like, have people at a distance. He's generally a nice enough person and talks to people in a way, but he never lets anyone close. And then we have our female lead, who is this massage therapist, but in private she also has some issues because she is left an ex of hers who got into a bad situation with a bar. He's a bar owner and has got into some shit with some shady people, and is wanted. And he suddenly got stalkerish tendencies towards her, so she has some issues with that. But I enjoyed the romance here. I enjoyed also the other elements that were in it. I actually end up enjoying it quite a lot. I end up giving it 4.5 stars. It's not as good as the first Brooklyn Air books that I read, was Brooklyn Bruisers book, which was the Brooklyn Air. But I like that we got to see our main characters from that book in this book, so that was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's definitely a lot better than the one I read in January, the first book in the series, so I'm very happy to see that the quality is better in this one. The next thing that I read was Purls and Potions by Nancy Warren. This is the first book in the Vampire Knitting Club series, and this is I think it's the 5th book in the Vampire Knitting Club series, and this is so much fun. This was definitely my favorite after the first one, in my opinion. We have this, in this one we have a spell going wrong. She's a witch, and her and some of her witchy friends have decided to try and make this love potion thing, because we have one who is completely in love with this guy, and he never seems to notice her. She dotes on him and does everything for him. And then the only thing that he needs to do is to make him look up and look at her, and then he would become infatuated with her because of this spell. And hopefully by the time that the spell wears off, he will also actually see her, be fond of her, so they won't notice there was anything amiss. But the spell ends up going wrong, because it ends up with a lot of other people actually also getting this spell, and the wrong people being infatuated with the wrong people kind of thing. And then there's also a murder going on, which also makes it for an interesting, obviously, thing. And I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun, and I liked seeing the banter with the vampires. So she has this yarn store, and in the back of that there's this knitting club with vampires, and her grandmother used to own this shop, but she was saved by the vampires when she died and is now a vampire. So yeah, it was so much fun. Enjoyed myself when I was reading this, and I gave it 4.5 stars. The next thing that I finished was Something Wicked This Way Comes by Bradbury. This is the second book in the Greentown series, I think that's what it's called. I started this one a long time ago and never finished it, but I picked it up when I had to read a classic. I thought this was the easiest book to put on that. And I enjoyed it. I don't think this one was as good as Dandelion Vine, but I still really enjoyed it. It was very creepy, and I understand why it's so popular. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. It has a lot of quotes in here that I really enjoy, and it talks about a lot of different things, which also happened in the first one. Also, it has a lot of creepy things happening. But I definitely want to read more Ray Bradbury in the future. There's no doubt about it. But 4.5 stars for this one. The next thing that I finished was Promise Canyon by Robyn Carr. This is book 11 in the Virgin River series, and for a long time I had issues with this series, not really enjoying the books, but I'm happy to say that this one definitely worked for me. I definitely enjoyed this one a lot more than I enjoyed some of the most previous I read before this. In this one we're following this guy. I think I said he owned a ranch, but he's actually a veterinarian, but he has a horse farm, I think, as well. Like, he's a horse veterinarian, and he's helping out and he has horses on his farm. He also is and then we have the woman who comes in, also has like had horses in the past, but I don't remember if she had something else. She comes from a different city, I believe. Yeah, but they're both indigenous people coming from indigenous backgrounds, and that was interesting. I don't know how accurate it is, but I enjoyed it. And the romance was okay. And then we had one of the elderly townspeople passed away in this book, and we have one of the characters from the first book, Jack. He is having to administrate like her house, maintain who gets what in terms of money and where things go, and then people start wanting it, and he has to decide if that's a good idea or not, and if that works with what the town wanted and stuff, and becomes a lot more difficult than he anticipated. But it was that's an earthquake, of course, because there's always something dramatic happening in these ones. But it was nice enough, and there wasn't a lot of pregnancies in this one, which was also a nice change. But I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars because I actually really enjoyed this one, and I also felt a little bit generous today. But it's been a long time since I enjoyed a Virgin River book this much, and the narration of the audiobooks are always pretty good. The next thing that I read was My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. This is a standalone thriller. This follows a woman who knows that her sister is killing the men. It's like the third person she's killed. In the beginning it was sort of a self-defense thing that happened, but then she's always the one that has to help her remove the evidence, and she doesn't really know how to tackle it. By the time when the third killing happens, does she go to the police to let them know, or what does she do, because she doesn't want to do anything wrong. The sister is kind of a favorite in the family, and yeah, there's a lot of things going on. I enjoyed it. I thought the narrative was really interesting. It was definitely kept me interested the whole time. It's very short, so you can get through this book quite quickly. So if you enjoy a thriller and have like this, then definitely consider trying it out, because there was a lot of fun. It was definitely interesting. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Last and final thing that I finished in February was Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Wrede. This is the first book in the Enchanted Forest series. This, or Chronicles, I think it's called. This one follows Cimarine, who is a princess, but she is not really like other princesses, obviously, because she doesn't want to do embroidery. She doesn't care about just sitting inside, looking pretty. Anyway, she doesn't really want to do the things that other princesses want to do. She wants to do sword fighting. She wants to ride horses. She wants to go out and having fun. She doesn't care about getting married. She doesn't want to get married off to just this one random prince who is selected for her. So she decides instead to let her being captured by this dragon, and then the things goes from there. I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. It just has the charm that I like in middle grade fantasies. We have the dragons in here are really good. I like the humor surrounding it. There's a lot of references to all of the different fairy tales, and I liked how it was done, that it was sort of in a quite subtle way, but still that you could easily see that the reference, but it was not like your average fairy tale retelling. So I definitely enjoyed it, and I will definitely recommend it if you haven't read it before. And if you like fairy tale retellings, and if you like children's fantasy from like further back, then this is definitely a gem. I end up giving it 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to read on. I think if you like Diana Wynne Jones, you would also like this one. So definitely recommend it, and I will read on all of the other books in this series. I just need to get them first. So with that note, I end up on a good high note, and I'm very happy about that. Let me know in the comments down. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what you were reading in February. Did you read any new favorites? Did you read any books of the books that I was talking about today as well? Please let me know that in the comments down below. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.